Hello and welcome to episode 107 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by Chitty's Cheesesteaks. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, joined by Matthias Altman Kirasaki, and a very special guest, radio play-by-play announcer for the Mets, Keith Raad. Keith, thanks so much for joining us today, man.
Good to see you, boys. Good to see you, boys.
Absolutely. I know we were talking before. You're in beautiful Sacramento right now, a few hours before the Mets take on the A's. But obviously, before we get into all that, we just kind of want to talk with the start of the season, everything else. I think the obvious thing we just have to start with is early impressions of Juan Soto, just in the clubhouse. Obviously, at the plate, we know he's not off to this Soto-like start, although he's getting on base every game, it seems like, and Alonso's benefiting. But just kind of your early thoughts on Soto's tenure as a Met here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on this guy. We have to remember that he's a human being and not a robot. Even though you get to the point where you start to watch him in the games and you're thinking, okay, where's this one going to go? Right, double, triple, homer. What are we going to see? But he's a human being. We forget that. Oh yeah, you strike out every once in a while. But for him in the clubhouse, on the plane, just being one of the guys that he fits right in. He's really quiet, soft spoken. He's a good personality for the team, but it's not that he's. People want to know, is he a diva? No, not at all. He's a regular guy and a baseball junkie. And one thing that sticks out to me is that he sets time when it's time to hang in the clubhouse with the guys to talk baseball with the media. But then when it's time to lock in the cages, he's really, really locked in. He wants to be coached. And those are the really nice things because it's going to be 15 years of this person in your organization. So it's got to be a great fit. And so far, so good for Juan Soto. He's a nice guy. I think he's just quietly getting himself comfortable with playing with Lindor and Alonso every single day. The results have been great. But a good start. I mean, it's very early. Not that there's been no problems. I don't expect any problems, but it's been great from a personal standpoint with him.
Sure. And I guess baseball-wise, we're probably going to circle back to him, I guess. But just talking about Pete Alonso, obviously, like how much we see it early on as far as with Pete getting these opportunities with runners in scoring position, but just how huge is it, having a guy like Juan Soto hitting in front of him? And we know Soto's not off to his torrid pace, but he's obviously a threat no matter what. So I'm just kind of curious, like, is there an easier feeling with Pete this year too? And just having the benefit of Soto hitting in front of him, does that make him relax more? And I'm just kind of curious now because he seems like it's a much different hitter just from a year ago.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, this is kind of the first year. I mean, I know he has the Mets record for most RBIs in the season, 131. So he's driven in runs before, but there's always been over the last few years a talk about protection for Pete. Well, now Pete is the protection for Juan Soto, and I think that he stepped into that role. Obviously, he's had a great start to the year, but I think that responsibility he likes, and when you bring in a guy like Soto again, that's why it's so important to make sure that the clubhouse it gels because those are alphas, right? Those are the best
Sure.
of the best in the world in the same room. And so, Lindor knows he's a stud. Soto knows he's a stud, and Alonso wants to prove to everybody. I know the last 2 years weren't great. I'm still a stud, and we're seeing that. And I think free agency had a play in that with Pete. He didn't get what he thought he was going to get. Maybe felt a little bit, maybe in his mind, disrespected by the market. Not any team in particular, just the market. But I think we've seen a different Pete on a personal level, a man on a mission. And then Eric Chavez on the hitting side talking about one of the great stories that Will Salmon wrote in The Athletic. Will does a terrific job. Eric Chavez, this great line said, well, Pete took the offseason to finally learn how to hit, which is like, what? What does that mean? But he really took the time to know his swing, study video and see when he's working well, I'm doing this. When I'm not working well, I'm not doing these things and studying that. And so some of these mechanical changes, I think we're seeing a guy that is going to do this for the whole season, which is just have a good foundation, a good base. I mean, we all know he's not chasing that slider. He hasn't been grounded out in the double plays. I mean, these things that we know he struggled with recently. And I think so far the foundation's been laid. But man, what a start he's had.
I felt like last year we waited for him to go on one of those Pete Alonso tears, but he already has 15 RBIs this year, and he didn't drive in more than 19 in a month last year. So that's obviously he's off to a ridiculous start. But what do you think is the biggest difference you see between last year's Pete Alonso and this year's Pete Alonso?
I think you have to, one thing Buck Showalter taught me to look at was, the mental and the emotional and the physical. So, like a guy like Brett Beatty is struggling. He's a good baseball player, but mentally he hasn't had the fortitude yet to figure it out up here. Pete, I think last year, as you talked about, he wanted to have that big moment, that big swing, and he put so much pressure on himself, right? Again, these are human beings. And so I think free agency was a big part of it. The mechanical changes that he's made with his hips to keep those locked in. Yeah, I think it's the real deal for him. I just hope it's a monster year, but um, I hate to look ahead, but it's hard not to look ahead. Like, right, if he does have a monster year, what does that mean for his future?
Sure.
Hard not to think about those things, but for now, you wouldn't mind. He's on pace for, I think, 210 RBIs. I don't think he's going to get to that, but we might as well have fun while we can about what he's doing production wise. And a lot of the numbers, I mean, RBIs to me, they don't really mean the guy's value has been good or bad. It's just who's on in front of you. And if Soto's going to get on, 200 times a season, 150 times a season, somebody better be driving him in. At least it's Pete so far.
Yeah, no, definitely. And to that point, it just kind of feels like he's using up the middle and the other way again a little more. Obviously, talking about these guys being in scoring position so much, feels like he's a little more getting back to that hitter he was maybe in 2019, hitting a lot of those doubles and stuff. But man, 100+ RBI year from Pete Alonso with guys like that on base. And we haven't even talked about Francisco Lindor yet, who came runner-up in the MVP last year. It's good problems to have. But real quick, you talked about Brett Baty, right? And obviously we have to bring him up, his kind of struggles. From speaking to him or kind of what you're seeing, obviously he's been a guy in spring training and AAA. He seems to obviously have the mental fortitude and the confidence to hit well, but at the big league level, he just seems to not be able to put it together. So I just kind of know we're wondering as far as like what you've seen from Brett, what you're hearing, like is his spirits up, or the Mets can't wait for Jeff McNeil to come back? Like, I'm just kind of curious there.
Yeah, I felt a little lonely, not as lonely as Brett did the other day at Citi Field, but I'm sitting in that ballpark and I'm watching him struggle, thinking, man, I think I'm the only person in this building that has seen this guy, tear a league apart in the minor leagues. And everybody goes, oh, it's the minor leagues, it's the minor leagues. Yeah, but he's a good baseball player. This guy's a former first round pick.
Sure.
He has the talent. It's a matter of landing that mental part of the game, the edge. And I think the lesson that I take from Mark Vientos last year when he saw JD Martinez walk into the room, right? That entire offseason, Mark's going to be the DH, Mark's going to be the DH. At the last second, they bring in JD Martinez, and Vientos took a bit of an ego hit and went down to AAA. We know his story. He fought, but he made a kind of the mental change of, what, for lack of a better phrase, to clean it up, forget this a little bit. Let me do my thing. And if it's the Mets that like me, if it's not the team that likes me, I'm just going to do my thing. And I think Brett needs that a little bit. Not that I'm, I've never had a hit in the big leagues. I've never fielded a ground ball in the big leagues, but just from seeing him, I think the difference is for those guys that at the minors, it works out and doesn't at the big league levels because they just, that mental edge, and people talk about New York and the booze raining down. I mean, he feels all that. He that's a real part of what's going on between the ears. So I hold out hope because he really can hit. That's not the Brett Baty that was in the minor leagues, the guy that's rolling over on ground balls to second base. The area made at second base, that's one thing. I mean, the guy's learning a new position. It's just, adding insult to injury right now. But, at the same time, he knows that the clock's running out a little bit. I mean, people are getting tired of the expectations that this is going to be that bat that turns it around, and we're going on a couple of years of this now.
Yeah, and I think one of the big differences between Baty and Acuna coming in this year was that Acuna can play multiple positions around across the diamond. He's played the outfield before, shortstop, second. He's learned a little bit of third, but Baty, like you said, is learning a new position. What do you make of what he's done at second base? I know this is his first big league action there.
Yeah, I think he's done a fine job. I mean, he is an athletic kid. He played high school basketball, was really good at that. Lateral movements are really, really tough at second base. You're learning new angles and things like that. And so, I mean, you go back to that play he had against the Marlins, the athletic Brett Baty thought in my head, this is going to work out great. We're going to get the out at second base. But the conservative approach would have been get the ball through to first and just get an out right there. And not that game, that the error ends up affecting the outcome of the game. I mean, Max Meyer was shoving that day for the Marlins too. But I think Brett's made good enough strides. David Stearns the other day said that he's been doing better than we thought. So that's all good. It's not just fielding ground balls, but handling relays, stolen base attempts at second base. So far, so good with that. Asking a guy to completely change a position that he's literally never played before. And it also does help, if I hate to say that, but if things don't work out for Brett, for the Mets, maybe another team sees a lot of value in him.
Sure.
That only helps what you would get in a return, a guy that can now play multiple positions, in the infield.
Yeah, absolutely. You hope you turn it on, but like you said, I think Met fans and everyone's just kind of, waiting, not waiting anymore for that hit to come. And it just feels like, maybe like you said, a change of scenery could help him. But if he's hitting and playing multiple positions, it makes him more appealing. But you mentioned Mark Vientos. I did want to bring him up too. Obviously, a slow start this year. Just want to get your impression so far. I don't know if I want to call it a sophomore slump because he's been, was his first kind of full season, but he's been, had cups of coffee a couple of years before. But just want to kind of get your thoughts on, him early on here. And, if you think there's cause concern for the Mets or a guy that's just trying to refigure the league out now that's caught up to him and just got to make the adjustments to get back there.
Yeah, he really unlocked something last year and then was playing with house money a little bit, I think, with all the success that he had. And then you go into the offseason and he's a huge piece of what they're going to do this year. And we saw it immediately in Houston, right? Lindor, Soto, Alonso, those guys are getting on. And so whoever's hitting fourth or fifth, you better drive in those runs. The world is watching, right? And those moments happen. So Vientos has been struggling and Nimmo's been struggling in that same exact spot. So the responsibility on Vientos is so much more profound this year than it was last year. It was like, wow, another hit from Vientos. Who saw that coming? Right? This is amazing. Now he better hit because we need him to hit. So, there takes a little bit of an adjustment period for Vientos. I have a feeling he's going to have a big road trip because I just feel like the last few plate appearances starting to take his walks a little bit, drive the ball to the outfield of the gaps. None of them really fell in for him, but I think it's going to be pretty soon for him to break out. And the nice thing from last year, was what made him so good was his ability to, if he did have 3-4 games, we thought, that fifth game, he'd be right back to it. The slumps were not very, very long. So, this year, again, I always try to see what's going on between the ears, think about these guys and what they're actually doing in their lives. That responsibility, even with Nimmo, it's different than it has ever been before. And so there's a lot of pressure, right? When you've got Soto at second base and Alonso at first, they're staring at you, drive me in right now. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and another player, and sort of shifting gears towards what we saw this past week against the Marlins, but Clay Holmes struck out 10 in his start this week. It was the deepest he's pitched in a game since his rookie year. And obviously he's transitioning from being a closer to being a starter. And he had a lot of success as a closer. What are you seeing from him making this transition from being a back end bullpen guy to being a starter?
He's been great. I mean, he's really, really smart and he studies the game really well. So I know that he's doing all the right things that you need to do to be successful. And in learning pitch grips, learning the new kick change that we love to talk about on the air. We always love the kid Howie. Howie just came out of the word sweeper, and now we got to learn kick change. So it's a little different. But he understands recovery too. I mean, that's the biggest thing is to stretch out your body to go 3, 4, 5 innings, hopefully 6 and 7, and then recover and come back 5 days later to do the same exact thing. So he's embracing it big time. But the stuff is legit. I mean, the thing he has to figure out is the walks. And I think we're seeing that, and that's got to change. But I think that's just a byproduct of him, learning. If I don't have my sinker, a pitch is getting hit. What do I go to support that? And so while we're waiting for him to figure it out, he should get a little bit of time before he's, Nolan Ryan over here or Tom Seaver. I think the walks will come down, and once the walks come down, then I think he's smooth sailing because even when he gives up hits, it's 2 walks and a rinky-dink, base hit over the third baseman that brings in a run. It was a little rinky-dink base hit. He's not giving up balls to the gap or home runs. So, 10 strikeouts, and it really kind of felt like he had an okay game. And then you go, wow, that's 8, 9, now 10. So just the tip of the iceberg for him. And another maybe David Stearns miracle find here.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about miracle finds, right? It feels like, especially with the pitching, that's where Stearns is kind of pulling his magic. And, talking about, and even more so, the bullpen's been outstanding. I think that's been a bit of a surprise and a good way to start. Just kind of want to get your impressions early on that. Seems like Edwin Diaz has fully got his legs back underneath him after that injury. So I'm just want to get your thoughts early on this Mets bullpen, if you think they can kind of sustain most of the success that they're having so far.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, sometimes I just compare and contrast, the feeling of last year and this year. I mean, the bullpen last year, they just walked so many guys. Remember the beginning of the season, it just felt like, my God, why? When you're relieving, you're coming out of the the bullpen, usually it's a pretty tight situation. Don't put anybody on for free, and they haven't been doing that. So the strikeouts are cool, the lack of runs are cool, but I think that just throwing strikes.
Mhm.
And Max Kranick is a great example of just somebody who's coming in. He's the opposite of Clay Holmes, right? He's starter to reliever, and he's been fearless. He doesn't care who's in the box. He's just throwing strikes, and that helps. I mean, all of a sudden you blink and 2.5, 3 innings go by, and scoreless baseball from one of your guys. And then the nice thing is that as Kranick's doing well and Brazaban's doing well, Minter wants to do well, and Stanek wants to keep it up, right? You don't want to be the guy that lets your teammates down. So that helps when it's contagious in a good way. But I mean, Minter is a great addition as a lefty. I mean, we're sitting here now. It's April 11th. I mean, he's going to be facing Otani at some point. He's going to be facing Bryce Harper at some
Sure.
point. Big lefties, Matt Olson. So, he's a tough, good lefty to have back there. And then Diaz, I'm still waiting for him to. It's hard not to be like, where's that 2022 Edwin
Sure.
Diaz? I don't know if he'll ever come back out again. But if you look at Edwin's year by years, it's either elite
Mhm.
or kind of shaky. And it's been crazy. I mean, there's 1 year he'll have a 1 year he'll have a 3 ERA. And you can't explain why. So if he goes back anywhere near lights out, I mean, it's look out, because Stearns once again put together a good bullpen, different looks. And the guys that they've had, Budo and Garrett, they got better, right, year over year. So that's really good to see.
And they're doing this without Daniel Nunez too. And I saw the fan base was sort of piling on Danny Young, unfortunately, because of his one outing in Miami that didn't really go as planned. But he had a couple of good outings on this homestand. But we're coming up on this point where Nunez could be ready. He was a big part of the bullpen last year. What do you see, like, with the players that are sort of fighting for that last spot in the bullpen? What do you see from those guys?
Yeah, I mean, Danny Young has struggled at times. I think that he sometimes can be that lefty specialist, though, that you're going to need in the big spot.
Yeah,
And I know that, as when you watch games and you don't see results, fans get frustrated. But from a managerial perspective, from Carlos Mendoza, right, you keep that guy's spirits high because you're going to need him. I mean, we learned that last year when the roster goes 60, 70 deep, and you're going to need everybody, including Dednil Nunez, who last spring, if he was pitching on a mound, everybody who was watching the spring training game would go, I never heard of this guy, time to turn it off. And all of a sudden he's like the guy. So yeah, they have him at AAA, not because he's injured, but it was this slow ramp up. They want him to do, back to back, rest for a couple of days, come out for another one. So they want to give him that kind of big league type schedule before they bring him up here. But if they do have to make a decision, maybe Young goes out. But it's these are good problems to have right now. If poor Danny Young is the only person in the bullpen that's given up like a run, and it's like,
Sure.
this guy's terrible. We have to take a breath. Yeah, he's struggled. There's no doubt that he's struggled, but it just compared to everybody else right now, it looks worse because everybody's been so good.
and the thing is, I'll say that is that I think Young's one rough outing was in a game they're already up 10-2.
Yeah, it was over.
So
The game was over. Yeah.
It's a good time to be a Met fan when you're upset for a guy in a bullpen if they give up a run. So that's a good problems to have. But I want to transition real quick, just kind of talking injury updates. Obviously, there's a few guys on the shelf for the Mets working their way back. Alvarez has played in the game. Played for the St. Lucie Mets. I think he played about 5 innings the other day and caught. Just want to get if you have any updates on him. Guys like Jeff McNeil working their way back. I know we heard about Sean Manaea as far as him having a setback, and also is David Pete. I know the other day David Peterson kind of got taken out. Is he doing okay? Is there any kind of concern there? I know the Mets have a few injuries as far as they keep winning, so we gotta get the update there.
Yeah, so I will tell you, for Peterson, he's good to go. That was just a weird fluke
Sure.
thing. We were literally so confused on the broadcast as to what was going on. I mean, he just got ill really, really quickly. Just got sick, but he's fine. Paul Blackburn will be throwing some live bullpens coming back from that knee inflammation, so he'll be back soon. Alvarez, they're going to be slow and steady with
Sure.
Alvarez.
Sure.
That's even when he comes back, he's not going to be 100% with that hamate bone. I remember when Luke Ritter hurt his hamate bone in the minor leagues, he rushed back after 4 weeks, and he told me it took like months before it felt 100%, even though he could play with it. So the Alvey one is really, really tough because he's hitting with that hand, and that's his catching hand too. So, but it was good to see him yesterday in St. Lucie catch those 5 innings, or 2 days ago catch those 5 innings. Manaea has not been throwing, that one worries me a little bit because, they shut him down for a little while. Then they brought him back, and then he felt something again. So that's a little bit worrisome. And then Jeff McNeil, I always find it funny because, Jeff was struggling and people were saying, well, get rid of Jeff. And everybody's saying we need Jeff back.
Right.
And they do. The Mets do need Jeff McNeil back. And they're hoping late April for him. So it'll be here sooner rather than later, which is really, really good. And then the Mets can maybe see some production from second base, because Acuna and Beatty there's no doubt both of them have given the Mets pretty much nothing on the offensive side.
Sure. To that point, though, I'm assuming Acuna would stay as far as with the athleticism, the base running, and kind of what Matthias is talking about, the ability to play at a few more positions. And I mean, obviously they'll see when McNeil comes back, but I guess they would be more tempted to roll with that kind of platoon, and hopefully McNeil gets hot.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way. The only reason I'd say they keep Beatty is because they love that lefty bat, but McNeil becomes that lefty bat. But yeah, Acuna, the thing that separates him too, we're seeing this with Jose Siri, is that late game speed, right? The pinch running. When the offense is maybe quiet, they need to manufacture a run. But the Mets are literally having these conversations where you have this option or you have that option. I mean, Acuna is not he's not totally ready as a big league hitter. I mean, it's true. He needs more games at AAA. He needs more seasoning, and then all of a sudden he's kind of like, I get a little bored in these games that are at AAA. Like, I need the bright lights. And it's like, okay, well, then do you keep him up here? Does he learn on the job? And then Brett Beatty, what is the point of him going back to AAA, right? Like, is he going to go hit 350 again and then call him up when we're in the same spot? So as we're talking about this, the three of us, so are David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza. They're talking to Mendy every once in a while. They're having these conversations too. But I would probably say they lean towards, Acuna of the two, if I were to be a betting man right now, because of that speed that really helps. And his glove is obviously terrific.
Sure. Real quick, you mentioned Carlos Mendoza talking there. I can't help but thinking about this Marlins series, and specifically the moves the Marlins manager didn't make, especially against Pete Alonso. We know Gary was very, very vocal about it. He was right. I'm just curious because it's, you look at someone like that who's a rookie manager, right? It's a different kind of deal, rebuilding team. I don't think they have the resources and all that as compared to the Mets. But just thinking back, Carlos Mendoza is in his second year being a big league manager. And, I was a finalist for the manager of the year last year. And you think about these kind of, I want to say, rookie mistakes that you saw over the weekend. I'm just curious about Mendoza himself, his presence as a manager. I know Gary mentioned it helps having, an experienced bench coach like the Mets do. Maybe the Marlins don't have that. I think his bench coach was a AAA coordinator. So I'm just, in dealing with Mendoza and talk with him, like, what is the feel? Because you see that and it just does not seem like someone who was a rookie manager last year.
Absolutely not. And the best thing about Carlos Mendoza that we've learned is that when it's time to look at the binder and read the right analytical matchup, we're reading it. But when it's time to watch the game and use the heart, as we call it, the heartbeat of the game, that's when you do it. I mean, some of the best moments, right, are when Mendy runs out there and everyone's going, all right, he's taking the ball, and then he leaves the starter in.
Yep.
Those get everybody going, right? Even up in the broadcast booth, we're like pumping our fists under the table. We're jacked up, We throw me in there for one more inning. But with the Marlins manager Clayton McCullough, and just having watched them and seen them, a lot of the moves that they've made, they seem a little bit like, here's what we think the best thing to do in this moment is. Here's what the analytics say. We're going to go with that. And so that's the way they want to do it. They want to use it. And the best part about Carlos is that his ability to say, no, I know that this situation maybe in the binder calls for this, but I want to do it this way. But actually, that particular moment you're talking about, I wouldn't load the bases. But I was talking to Carlos about that, and he said it's not the first time that he's seen somebody do it. He said he saw when he was with the Yankees, he saw the Twins do that. They loaded the bases to face Gleyber Torres with one out. Twins brought the infield in. Gleyber rips one to short. Correa field throws home for one. They go to first, double play, inning over. And Mendy was like, huh. So it's not as if this was, oh my God. Now it turned into that because Pete Alonso made the Marlins pay badly, and we were all kind of going, I don't think I would have ever done that. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, the Mets are in really, really good hands with their manager, who could look at that, could be presented that situation by the analytics department and say, thanks, but no thanks.
Sure.
You need David Stearns to be able to say you have free reign to do that too. And so that's the perfect marriage too. You have the manager making the decisions, and he'll go back after the game. And if David's in there going, I agree with you or I don't agree with you, you have that nice free flow of ideas. That's what making the Mets a really good organization right now.
Yeah, and just kind of, we don't want to keep you all day. Last couple things we kind of have for you, just like on a personal level for you. I was just wondering if there's any team or series or anything you're like very excited to call. Obviously, the Dodgers are, of the world and stuff like that. But I'm just curious if there's something you have circled on your calendar, particularly that you're excited to call as far as games.
I think we play National League teams, obviously, home and away every single year. But
Sure.
next month going to Boston and Fenway. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I remember my first year, 2023, we went out in the Green Monster and got to sign the Green Monster back there. And there's all these old signatures from players and coaches and stuff. So that's awesome. And then, in August, we're going to play the Little League Classic against the Seattle Mariners that everyone kind of forgets about, but that's okay. It's in August. It's a million miles away from now. That'll be really, really unique. But, we're at least playing the Phillies soon.
Sure.
I feel like we didn't play the Phillies last year until, late May, early June. You just want, now that the Mets are, at their peak right now, like late 2024 Mets, you want to see the Phillies. You want the Braves right now. You want those matchups, because this year, if those three teams, I know the Braves got off to a bad start, but you just want those matchups as much as possible.
The only thing I wish about those Phillies and Braves series at home this year, at least, were that they were on the weekends.
Yeah, that's a weird one, right? That's
I know. It was. They don't face the Braves for a while. I was looking at the schedule. Which is crazy, because they've already faced the Marlins 6 times, and they don't face them until the end of August now. But I sort of, looking back on last year, there were so many amazing moments last year. What was your favorite moment of the 2024 season?
Oh, man, I only have one kid, but I can imagine it's like picking your favorite kid. I mean,
I'm the youngest of 5, so yeah.
Okay. Probably game 161. Just
sure.
Even though truly, to take a step back and know that the Mets were whoever lost game 1 was probably going to win game 2, knowing that the other team is probably going to lay off the gas a little bit. Just the insane drama of Schwellenbach shoving over 7 again. Mets are down late. Tyrone Taylor has this 15, 16 pitch ridiculous at bat. All these hits the double to give him the lead. Nimmo homers, then the Lindor homer. Diaz going back out for the 9th. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. So that one, just because of the moments, and then just that Pete home run. You're going into that thinking, all right, we're going to fly home tonight, and what time are we going to get back? And the season's over, and all of a sudden this ball's sailing out. And then the Lindor grand slam. I'll say it. I didn't know he was going to hit a grand slam, but in that moment, they just destroyed that Phillies bullpen. Sure. Anybody else out was like, all right, who's next? I knew he was going to do something, base hit, double, but a grand slam, that I didn't know. So I felt like Kodai Senga probably all year. Remember that gif of Kodai shocked after the Lindor home run, the grand slam. That's the face that I would make when Howie would make all those ridiculous calls next day, because it was just one after another after another.
It's incredible. And hopefully there's a lot more moments to come with this team. It just seems like things are onward, upwards, good vibes, great things going on. We can't wait, but we don't want to keep you all day. We know you got to get ready for the A's now. Have a great West Coast trip. Thank you so much for coming on. And everybody, will update you next week when the Mets are coming back. But as always, let's go Mets.